Hey there, welcome back. I'm glad you're here. My name is Beau, the host of the Investor Financing Podcast. On today's episode, we have my colleague, Amanda Vargas, who is a top franchise broker. She'll be joining, and we're going to be doing a deep dive. We're doing a Q&A session all about the franchise industry, how to find franchises, what's the process, what's the due diligence. Anyway, stay tuned. This is a great episode. And the first question is, how to narrow down the focus of your franchise search. It seems overwhelming with so many concepts. What are the best practices you found over the years working with so many candidates and helping them narrow down their focus?
There are over 4,000 franchises all across America. So yes, it can get very overwhelming. But the easiest way to answer this question really depends on the person. Every time I go out, I always get asked, what is the hottest franchise out there? But in reality, it's a lot more than just finding what the hottest is. It's what the right fit is for you. So we look at things like your skills, your financial capability, what kind of life you're looking for. So quality of life is a big deal. What type of culture you're looking for. And then we look at all the business categories that exist in franchising. So we do try to narrow down as much as possible. And there's also the territory factor. So that franchise may or may not be available in your market. So we're going to analyze all of those components and narrow down as much as possible and find you a really good opportunity.
Thank you. After a candidate finds two or three franchises to look into, they like these concepts that the franchise broker or consultant has showed them. The franchisor oftentimes sends them additional due diligence, such as the FDD. For somebody that doesn't know what an FDD is, could you kind of explain to them what an FDD is and maybe what they should be looking at in the process with an FDD?
So the FDD stands for Franchise Disclosure Document. It is the contract between the franchisor and the franchisee. So if it is a franchise, it's going to have an FDD, and it's going to state all of the responsibilities of the franchisor and the responsibilities of the franchisee. So it does have 23 items, and each one of the items is going to have a breakdown of the fees, of the territory, of the financial performance of the franchisee. So you can essentially find out how much money you can make, what's the size of your territory, who are the people that you're going to get in business with. So who is the franchisor? What kind of experience do they have? It is a very long document. It can be hundreds of pages, but we help you break it down and understand. We have franchise attorneys on our team that can help you to not necessarily, but the idea of the FDD is that you are going to have an opportunity to work with a professional who understands and can break it down for you.
So after the candidate goes down and maybe identifies this franchise that they want to keep on going through the process of just kind of doing the due diligence on this, a good franchise broker has resources such as attorneys that specialize in franchises. And I think it scares people because they're like, wow, there's so much paperwork. But as they're going down the due diligence process, at what point would you recommend an attorney gets involved? Is that after they do their discovery day and they're pretty much ready to sign, but they just want to check the boxes and dot the I's kind of thing?
There are different steps in reviewing an FDD. So it does start with the client. So once the client gets disclosed the FDD, they have 14 calendar days to be able to review it and have a basic understanding. You don't have to understand everything. You're not signing on the dotted line. You're just given the document, and we're gonna help you break it down and understand what it is that you're reading. Then you're gonna have a conversation with the franchisor to make sure that you understand the entire agreement. But when it comes down to having a legal review, that happens at a later step. So once you are pretty committed on which franchise you're the most interested in, that's when you need to be making sure that you're getting a franchise attorney, not a business attorney, not your family lawyer, to look at the agreement and look out for things like red flags. What are things in the agreement that should be brought to your attention, to the client's attention? So they're going to help you review it, get clarity, understand it. In some cases, the FDD is not typically a highly negotiable document, but it does have room depending on the things that you're asking for. Not the franchise fee, not the royalties, but there are a lot of fees that the franchisor and the franchisee have to understand. So that's the purpose of getting a franchise attorney, and it usually happens at the end of the process, prior to attending discovery day.
Okay, the next question is, can you buy a franchise with no experience? So, for example, like if it's a maybe an HVAC company, is that something you can buy if you have completely no technical experience with working in the heating and cooling business?
That's the fascinating part about franchising, is that 99% of the time, it does not require you to have prior experience in the product that you're selling, in the service that you're providing. They're looking for people who can build an empire. They're looking for people who can manage, who can scale, who can run the business. They actually prefer that you don't have experience because they don't want you doing the work. They want you to know how to hire the right types of people to run the business, and you have to be able to take it to the next level and to deal with the things that are important, right? So checking the KPIs of the business, managing your employees, handling the networking and the marketing side of the business. So it's about you utilizing the skills that you have and growing that business, whether it's going to be a handyman franchise, a remodeling franchise, or an HVAC business.
So, what should somebody look for in a franchise broker? Because, it's very important that people that are watching this realize that, listen, you can work with a franchise broker instead of like thinking, hey, I'm going to go direct to this franchisor and just work with them. What are the advantages of working with a franchise broker? And part B of that is, how do you identify a franchise broker that has your best interest and knows what the heck they're doing?
Yes, so in full transparency, working with a broker is the best thing that you can do for yourself, because you are not paying anything extra. Whether you do independent research or work with a broker, you're paying the same types of fees. It's actually illegal for a broker to take any type of additional fees. So it comes out of the franchisor's marketing budget. And there's a lot of benefit in utilizing a broker because, first of all, there are a lot of franchises that the broker has access to that you may never have heard of before. So that's the number one thing. Then number two, you may think that you want a food business. You may think that you want to be in a fitness franchise, but you have to be able to compare, because at the end of the day, it's about finding what is going to be the right fit for you. Do you want to be done by 5, or do you want more flexibility for your life? Do you want to be able to make a certain income? It's a huge misconception that in some of these industries, you may think you're going to make a certain amount, and it's actually not true. There are businesses that most people don't think about, that brokers have access to, that are going to be much, much more profitable, much more scalable. So we have the ability with the resources that we have to be able to show those types of franchises. And then to answer the second question, which is how do you pick the right type of broker? So you want to ask what type of experience they have. So the organization that they're from, because they have to be part of a company, and that company is going to give them a robust inventory. Some of them do, some of them don't. So how large is the inventory of franchises that they have? What type of training did they receive? That's another big deal, because if they don't have enough training, most likely they are not really capable of helping you find the right brand. And there's a big, and I always say this, there's a big people component to this process. How much do they care? Do they actually want to help you find the right fit for you? Or are they just going to show you franchises based on the brands that they have? So they need to be able to take their time with you, listen to you, get to know you, and find the business that's the right fit. If you can make sure that they meet all of those components, then that's the right broker for you.
Great. Can you explain early on in a candidate's kind of franchise journey that, if they're working with a qualified franchise broker consultant, oftentimes they're going to recommend they take a profile assessment. Can you explain the Zorackle, what it is and how it helps the potential franchisee and the franchisor and the broker? Because when I first learned about it, through training, when Amanda was training me, I was like, it's fluff, right? It's not really going to work. But when I did the assessment, I was amazed to see that it nailed all the qualities and the skill sets I had. So it's a very important tool. I want to dive into it on those three. Why is it important for the potential candidate? Why is it important for the broker to have access to it, and as well as the franchisor?
It's pretty, the Zorackle assessment is pretty fascinating. It actually starts with the franchise. So what the founder of Zorackle is doing and continues to do with franchisors, he works with them and identify who is their top franchisee. So what kind of qualities do they have? So the top tier franchisee who's producing $12 million in revenue for this franchise has this type of business skills. They managed people for 20 years. They don't really have a lot of sales experience, but they know how to build teams. They understand the admin component, customer service, financials, operations. So that's just an example. So they look at that profile and they build that assessment based on that. So these are the types of franchisees that we want to have in our model. If we find those types of people, then their chances of succeeding is going to be very, very high. And I always say this, I want every one of my clients to be a top tier franchisee. You don't want to be at the bottom. You don't want to be average. You want to be at the top. But just because a brand is showing you that they're profitable, it doesn't mean that you're going to be profitable, because if you cannot sell. So let's say we have a brand and the main characteristic of the top tier franchisee is sales and marketing. If you hate sales and marketing, then you're probably not going to succeed like the top. Maybe you're just going to be average or bottom. And that's what happens with a lot of franchises. It's very normal to see your bottom, your middle, and your high. So it's just like when you're in college, right? So you had a class that you just barely passed with a C, and then you have the classes that you got A's every time. So you want to be an A student in franchising too. And that's how that's done.
Are you trying to escape the W-2 rat race? Or have you always wanted to own your own business? Have you ever thought about owning a franchise? If so, franuniversity.com can help. Our training program teaches you everything you need to know about franchise ownership, from choosing the right franchise to launching and running your business. We have the resources and specialists to help you from A to Z. You'll gain the skills and knowledge you need to succeed as a franchise owner. The best part, it's free to join. Go to franuniversity.com.
So Amanda, when candidates are going through the franchise process, oftentimes once they identify a potential match, they'll go and they'll do what's called validation. They'll start calling other franchisees in the system. What questions do you think are important for them to ask? Do we as franchise brokers, how can we help? I think that overwhelms a new candidate. Like, hey, I don't even know what to ask. Do we have a checklist? How do we prep them? How do we prep the candidate so they can ask the right questions?
We have a lot of resources at every step of the way, and validation is one of the most important steps in the process. That's when clients have the opportunity to talk to franchisees and really understand what the day in the life of a franchisee looks like, how much money they can potentially make, how long did it take them to break even, to ramp up. So we have questions that we provide our clients to help them prepare for those calls with the franchisees. And we're asking a lot of questions on their experience with the franchise. What did they do before they became a franchisee? So how does that actually relate, their background with how they're actually running the business? Are they happy running this business? If they had to do it again, would they have picked this franchise? Why or why not? And we do see a mix of very good validation calls, and there's also bad validation calls, but it doesn't mean that it's actually negative. We teach all of our clients in asking the hard questions, right? Because if someone is giving you answers that are not very positive, so if they're telling you that they're just not doing well, that they're not making money, we have to actually get to the bottom of it. Are they not making money because they're not following the system, or is it because the franchisor is not giving them enough support? So we don't know what the outcome is going to be, which is the amazing thing about franchising, is that we do give clients full transparency to understand what it is that they're getting themselves into. And validation is the step to do that, to be able to ask those questions and get full clarity on the franchise system.
Very good. Last question for today. After working with hundreds and hundreds of candidates, what do you think is the most surprising thing for these candidates? Like, is it the fact that they come in thinking they want some sort of franchise concept and they end up not even going to something close to that, and they complete other spectrum? Is that like the biggest shock you've seen that they I guess are kind of surprised that they were thinking they want one thing, but really they ended up falling in love with another idea and another business model?
I'm going to answer this in two different ways because that's what I have seen over the years. You actually have candidates who know what they want. So they'll come to you and they are they know the industry really well. In some cases, they actually have experience in running a non-franchise business in that sector. So they're just looking for advice on conducting proper due diligence on that franchise. So we are still helping them in making sure that they understand the FDD, making sure that they can ask the right questions and conduct proper due diligence. And then you have the second type of client who comes in thinking that they want something very specific, but you just help them to realize that that's not a right fit for them. And then you take them through this journey of finding other types of businesses. And to me, it's amazing because you get to to the end of the line, and they're so grateful to have met you, because if it wasn't for the broker, they would never have been able to find that type of business. So it really is, it's a process that you have to be open-minded. But if you want to look at a particular franchise, we will always do the research. Now, whether that's a good fit or not, it's good for you to have that trust relationship and know that we have done this for a very, very long time. So if we tell you that it's not a good fit, most likely will not be a good fit, and you just have to be open to looking at other options.
Hi, if you'd like to book a call with me and discuss SBA financing, whether it's a 7A or 504, or you just don't know where to start, maybe it's a startup business, you're buying an existing business, you're buying a franchise, you're building a new office building, you want to expand your existing business, we have multiple solutions. I can walk you through the 7A and the 504 and the SBA loan process. And if you have any other questions on any other types of financing, I'm happy to book a call with you. The link's below. Look forward to seeing you soon. So today we're going to discuss all franchise financing solutions, which acquisitions, equipment financing, remodels, rebuilds, new locations, inventory, accounts receivable, and working capital financing, startups. We're going to address all this and more in this presentation today. So what are some of the basic ways of financing a franchise? You got equipment financing. So there's equipment lenders out there that specifically specialize in financing all the equipment needed and the build out for your franchise concept. That's an option. You got SBA 7A and 504. Is your franchise that you're looking at acquiring, are they on the SBA directory as approved franchise? If not, maybe it's because they don't have enough units. Maybe they've never applied. We can dig into that. Sometimes it's advantageous for SBA financing. Sometimes you might want to do a combination of equipment financing with some lines of credit and working capital. We're going to talk about 401k rollovers. Sometimes if you have the right retirement account, you can actually roll that over and use those funds to purchase your franchise and get it started. We're going to talk about unsecured term loans and HELOCs. Equipment financing, flexible financing. Sometimes you can get $2, $3, $4 million, depending on the build out and the equipment needed. This could be for new or used equipment. Typically with equipment financing, they're only leaning the equipment they're lending on. Sometimes they'll do a UCC filing on the actual full business if they're doing build out and doing tenant improvements. What I like about equipment financing, it's quick, it's fast. Typically, you're going to get an approval within 24 hours and funding within a few days. So it's very fast. And a lot of borrowers like this because it's just speed. And instead of doing an SBA loan where they're going to collateralize not only the business with a UCC filing, that they might take a secondary lien on a primary residence. They're always looking for additional collateral. So if there's a collateral shortfall, that's why the SBA is going to look for additional assets that you may have. So just be aware, SBA is an awesome tool and we do a lot of SBA financing, but I want this to be about the different options you have. Now we're going to talk about the 7A and 504. The 7A can get up to 90% loan to cost. So you can build in the cost of the franchise fee, the cost of the build out, the cost of the equipment. With the 7A, you can also include working capital, and also you can budget in 3 months of employees' wages and things. So you can build out a good amount with the 7A. The 504 is just going to lend on the asset itself if there's real estate component or equipment component. So most of the time we're going to do a 7A because the 7A is geared for everything else. And you can even use 7A for real estate. But I'm just saying there's a lot more flexibility with the 7A. So is the franchise on the approved directory? If not, there's ways to get it listed on, but it is a process. Advantages of the SBA 7A specifically is that you can build in all the fees, right? The total project cost. So you're talking about franchise fee. You're talking about all the startup costs, all the hard costs, even the financing costs, even working capital and operating capital. We look at that number, that's the total project cost. Potentially you can get up to 90% finance. So that's pretty strong. That's why I like the SBA. However, going back to what I said earlier, if there's a collateral shortfall, they're going to look for additional collateral. So be aware of that. Anything with 25% equity or more in, they might go after and put a lien on that. Even if you don't have 25%, the bank may still put a second or third lien on a property. Let's talk about the 401k rollover. Let's just say you have a retirement account and it's an eligible vehicle that you can roll it over. You're going to talk to a specialist that handles the whole rollover process. They're going to walk you through. I'm not an expert in this in any means, but essentially you can roll over those proceeds and use that money for the acquisition of this business with all the costs, assuming you have enough in your retirement account. I believe you can do 100% of the costs of the funds. So I think you can roll over full retirement vehicle if it's the right vehicle. We're going to put you in touch with the right person to talk to that is an expert in this. I'm just going high level details of options that you do have or you may have. Let's just say now that you're interested in a franchise. They're not on the approved directory. There's not much equipment that you're going to be financing. It's a relatively inexpensive franchise to get going. Maybe it's $100,000. Potentially, if you're currently employed and have good credit, you can do an unsecured term loan. That would be in your personal name. And depending on your credit profile, your credit score, and your DTI, your debt to income, you can get upwards of $400,000. That would be high level there. What $50,000 to $150,000 is realistic, depending on the overall credit profile. That would be a term loan for 3, 4, 5, potentially up to 7 years. Approvals for this can happen very quickly. What's great about the term loans, there's no requirements on how you spend the money. So you can control the cost. There's no fund control. It's your money. It's your loan. You do what you want with it. And that sometimes expedites the process. You can also pair these products together, right? You can take your unsecured term loan and potentially still get an SBA loan and use that term loan to cover your out-of-pocket costs. You can even pair everything together, right? You can use these different resources depending on the total project cost of your franchise. You can use these different resources. So there's a lot of ways to do this. I'm just throwing out the ideas here, the basic funding solutions that we have. And then everything is unique and depends on the franchise you're buying and your unique situation. A HELOC, all right? Let's just say you have a lot of equity in your property, your primary residence or a rental property. You can most likely get an equity line on your property, and that's like a checkbook. You can write checks and you pay on what's dispersed. This oftentimes is a great for down payment for your SBA loan, or potentially you can use this for the franchise fee and then do some equipment financing. So if you have equity in your home, you can look at doing a HELOC. Typically, it's the lowest cost of funds that you're going to have, but it's not always the best way because you're using your personal residence, you're using the equity from your residence to invest in a business that may fail. Maybe it does really well. It might fail. There's some potential risk, but if you're sitting on a lot of equity, I do think it is a viable source that we can take a look at and see if that makes the most sense. So in short, as you can see, there's multiple ways of going about financing a franchise. And most people think SBA, and SBA might not be the best option. So I wanted this presentation or this episode of the show to be geared around, there's a lot of options. Where you are today, what you're working with, what kind of franchise concept are you buying into? Is it a quick serve restaurant? Is it a home service business where you need trucks and equipment, and maybe equipment financing would be an option and paired with unsecured term loan, right? You see how we're putting these pieces together? So there's no one size fits all, but there are a lot of options out there. A lot of people don't know that you're able to finance the equipment and the build out with equipment financing. And so the advantage there is it's a lot quicker process. So if you want to get started quickly, that might be the best option. And then you can have repayments of 2, 3, 4, up to 7 years on this equipment financing, depending on the structure, the bank that's making the loan. And typically you're doing some kind of EFA, which is an equipment finance agreement. So you own the equipment when you're done making your payments. It's not a lease. You're not leasing the equipment. So there's different ways of structuring this. Anyway, every option has its advantages and disadvantages. I just wanted to put this episode out there because we just interviewed several people that own franchises and they're doing quite well. They're raising money from investors as opposed to going and getting debt. There's lots of ways of doing this. But our show is really geared to show you options, on how to finance several different ways, how you can use some of your retirement potentially some of your equity in your home. And it really comes down to what will work the best for you. So I'm happy to discuss any of these options in detail. I know this was a kind of a scattered presentation, but I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Hey guys, Beau here. If you enjoyed what you saw, please subscribe to this channel. We talk all things financing. I've been in the lending industry for over 20 years, and I'm happy to answer your questions and provide great content.